Hello and welcome to today's Power of Knowing webinar, Veteran Caregiver Support and Resources. Understanding comes from knowing. Each veteran and their caregivers deserve to receive the full benefits and resources available to them. Often caregivers are not aware of all the resources available and how to access them. But power comes from knowing, and this webinar will focus on caregiver support and resources to ensure each veteran family is well informed and well served when care is needed. Power of Knowing is a free webinar series created by AuthoriCare Collective, which empowers people to be active participants in their care journey, enabling them to live on their own terms through personalized support for mind, body, and spirit. To get us started, please welcome our moderator, Risa Hanow. Risa serves as clinical and community educator at AuthoriCare Collective and is also a member of the Cone Health Ethics Committee. She is a licensed clinical social worker. Risa, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Paul. It's my pleasure to welcome our panelists for today. Shannon Pointer. Shannon is the Senior Vice President at the Association for Home and Hospice Care of North Carolina. Shannon has over 20 years of experience in nursing in a variety of settings, including clinic, health systems, school-based, and community. Shannon has her Doctor of Nursing Practice degree from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Shannon has a passion around advanced care planning, and in particular around veterans outreach and education. Shannon is very proud to facilitate a statewide hospice veteran partnership. Welcome, Shannon. And Christy Robbins. Christy is the coordinator for the Program of General Caregiver Support Services at the Veterans Administration. This program promotes the health and well-being of family caregivers who care for our nation's veterans through education, resources, support, and services. Christy has been with the VA since she was an intern in 2001 and then has been an employee since 2003. Christy has her master's degree in social work and is a licensed clinical social worker. Thank you for being with us, Christy. And we want to know a little bit about our participants who are joining us for this important conversation today. So we invite you to answer. We have two anonymous polling questions that have come up on your Zoom screen. The first is a multiple choice. Who's joining us? We know many of us have many different roles. We may be a caregiver and an advocate and a healthcare professional and a patient. So if you could take a moment and let us know if you are a veteran as well. The second question is whether you are a caregiver for a veteran. We are going to be focusing on that and would love to know how many participants are with us that are in that caregiver role for a veteran currently. So thank you for letting us know a little bit about who's joining us. Let's see, probably not surprising when we go ahead and look at the results. We have really a very good distribution of who's joining us. We have a lot of caregivers. A third of people are caregivers and healthcare professionals and human service professionals. And we have about 10% of people joining us identify as being a veteran. And then we have about a quarter of the people on the call today that are providing care for a veteran currently. So thank you for doing that. It helps frame our conversation. We know that while you might not be a caregiver currently, that might be something in the future. So we hope to share a lot of information today. I want to invite everyone to make use of the Q&A box on the Zoom screen. If you have a question at any time, go ahead and type that in, and we will do our best to get an answer during our webinar today. Christy, I think the best place for us to start is for you to tell us about your role and about the services, because power does come from knowing. So the more we know about what is available, the better we all will be.
So at the VA, I am the Program of General Caregiver Support Services Coordinator, and I work with caregivers of veterans who need assistance with activities of daily living or need assistance with either supervision or protection because of maybe dementia or a TBI maybe.
And a TBI,
A traumatic brain injury. I apologize. I use acronyms a little too often in my daily life at the VA. And so we have two programs at the VA in the Caregiver Support Program. We have the Program of General Caregiver Support Services, which is available to any caregiver who is enrolled of a veteran who is enrolled in the VA healthcare system and is taking care of a veteran. And we have the Program of Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers, which is available to veterans who are 70 to 100% service connected and go through the application process and are qualified for the program because they are receiving assistance for an activity of daily living, and maybe have a need that for care that from a caregiver who is probably taking care of them to the point that is keeping them from being placed in a community nursing home. And so that's what the Program of Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers is for, is to help veterans stay in the home and receive care in the home. And so those caregivers receive a stipend, a monthly stipend, and for the care that they provide. And that is really a lifesaver for a lot of our caregivers. It can be a family member or a friend, a close friend of a veteran who is providing that care.
So I know we'll probably get into more details as we talk today, but I think a question that we've received, which is one that comes to my mind as well, is what's involved with getting enrolled? Like for anybody to say, what is my first step if I think that I may need or benefit from one of these programs?
So for the Program of General Caregiver Support Services, usually we get a phone call from the caregiver or the veteran, or they talk to their primary care provider or their primary care social worker and say, you know, I'm a caregiver and I'm involved in extra supportive services. Can you refer me to the caregiver support program? And they let the caregiver support program know that the caregiver is interested in the services. And so the caregiver support program staff will reach out to the caregiver of the veteran who is interested in the services.
So this is for people who are in the VA system. So I'm speaking to my VA provider, maybe my VA social worker. So we need to be within the VA system as a starting point.
Yes, that is the starting point. Absolutely.
Okay. And just in general, how would, like, literally picking up the phone, sending, what do we do to start that if we're not yet connected with the VA system?
So you would want to get in touch with eligibility or enrollment at the VA And I can definitely send out some more information after today's call or after the Facebook Live, and get that information out to all of the participants in today's Facebook Live for you to follow up with, to get the information out for eligibility and enrollment.
Great. And we send an email to all Zoom participants, so we can put a link right in there. But I want to be sure that we know how to make that initial connection so we get to you when that need is there.
Yes.
So Shannon, when we think about our veteran population, we know that there are times when we're not only dealing with our day-to-day life, perhaps with aging, with other life circumstances, but sometimes also a terminal illness. And so we may be having veterans and caregivers that are receiving services from hospice. And I know that we have our vet-to-vet program and We Honor Veterans. And can you talk to us about some of the particular focus that is given to veterans and their caregivers when hospice is being provided?
Definitely, Risa. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you, Christy, for the wonderful information that you've shared so far. You know, it is a privilege, I think, to have worked within a hospice and now work for an association that represents 98% of all hospices across the state of North Carolina, in doing some amazing work and moments of joy and living, even during some of the most difficult times in individuals' lives. Having a terminal illness, 6 months or less to live if the disease runs its normal course, there can be lots of moments of living, moments of appreciation during that time. So hospices all across our state, all across our country, are caring for veterans at end of life. And many times we hear similar from veterans or people who are not veterans, that they are not aware of what hospice truly is about and wish they had known sooner. So this is a wonderful opportunity to mention that it's never a bad time to reach out and ask about hospice services, to ask about resources that are available for veterans. It's never too early to ask those questions. And so hospice, one of the things I want you to know is I run a statewide hospice veteran partnership. Well, what does that mean? That means that I'm doing work across the state to bring together hospice organizations, VA, things like what we're doing today is really the purpose of that partnership, because we want hospice organizations to be connected to services that provide, to organizations that provide services for veterans, but also to the VA, and to learn more about how to serve veterans and to better understand veterans' unique needs, especially at end of life. So this partnership works to provide education, awareness, but also the hope of this is that no veteran in any community across this state or this country is not aware that hospice is here for them when and if they need that. So hospice services, we could have a whole webinar about the wonderful services that hospice provides, but just know that agencies that are participating in the We Honor Veterans program specifically, I can tell you their goal is to better serve veterans. So it may be something as simple as on admission, completing something called a military history checklist, where they ask questions and the veteran and their family can express and share as much as they're comfortable in sharing about their service. And it helps those on the hospice team, such as the nurse, the social worker, chaplain, volunteers, all to do their very best to understand the veteran and their needs, their wishes for their care. And they may even do wonderful things like appreciation ceremonies for veterans, pinning ceremonies, all kinds of things that we could talk about in ways that hospices during this time are able to help veteran patients and their families have moments of living.
Great, thank you. And I know from our experience at AuthoriCare Collective being at the 5-star level, we put much attention into working with our veterans and those caregivers. And Christy, I know that you are connected to caregivers, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about when you are interacting with a caregiver, you have the ability to not just have conversation, but to do counseling, to bring caregivers together. Tell us some about the different opportunities that you're able to provide, and similar programs that other VAs across the state and country can provide for the caregivers.
Okay, so we are able to provide support groups, and we are able to provide the REACH intervention, and REACH stands for Resources for Enhancing All Caregivers' Health. And it's a clinical intervention where we provide coaching to our caregivers, and it can be done either one-on-one or in group sessions. And it really is great because we offer different protocols. We offer dementia protocols, spinal cord injury protocols. We offer PTSD, Parkinson's disease, ALS, and the caregivers get to learn stress management skills and problem-solving skills as it relates to caring for someone with one of those different disease etiologies. And we also provide caregiver health and well-being coaching. And that is really a neat intervention because we are able to focus on what matters to you and not what is the matter with you. And so the caregivers really love that intervention because they get to focus on themselves. You know, the highlight is on them as the caregiver, not the veteran. You know, usually we focus so much on what's going on with the veteran as it relates to caregiving. So with caregiver health and well-being coaching, we truly are focusing on the caregiver and the caregiver only. And they just have an opportunity to think about themselves and what their personal goals and values are. And so they really seem to enjoy that intervention. They have an opportunity to do what's called Building Better Caregivers, which is a 6-week online course. And they get to focus on building skills, self-care skills, and working on taking better care of their veteran and themselves. What they really like about Building Better Caregivers is they're able to talk to other caregivers on an online messaging board. And I really think that's what they like the best about the caregiver class, is talking to other caregivers on the online messaging board. They also have peer support mentoring, which is where they get paired with a caregiver mentor, and they absolutely are able to discuss and talk about the joys and pitfalls of caregiving with someone who has been in their shoes. And that is a wildly popular program. And once they've gone through that program, they can become a mentor as well. And so we have lots of different programs that are available to our caregivers where we're able to get them paired with each other and able to get one-on-one attention as well.
What keeps coming back to me is, if we don't know about these resources, if we don't even have a starting point. For instance, we have a question about whether spouses of deceased veterans qualify for any benefits. And I'm gathering that it's probably not a yes or a no. depending on the particular situation. But Christy, for like, where is that place that we go to get that answer? Where's our place of starting to get that answer?
So where I would go for spouses of deceased veterans, I would go to the Veteran Benefits Administration, the VBA. That's another acronym, but the Veterans Benefits Administration. Or you could start with your veteran service officer in your county. They are an amazing resource, and they are so gentle with caregivers and veterans alike to help walk you through what benefits you are entitled to as a caregiver or a dependent of a veteran.
And there is one located in every county.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And I know, Shannon, you've had some experience. Can you tell us about, you are a connector. You are somebody who really does connect the hospice organizations and the community, and maybe tell us about some of those connections and maybe some examples that stand out for you.
Absolutely, I would love to. And I also, Christy doesn't know this. I didn't talk to Christy about this ahead of time, but I have a family member who has experienced being a part of the VA and caring for their husband, who was a veteran, who received all of the things that Christy is talking about. My uncle's disease process. The VA sent her to education to help her learn more about his disease process so that she then could be able to better care for him in her own home, for which he stayed until the day that he died, through support every day with the VA, including equipment, supplies, things that he needed in order to be able to stay there safely and to have the best quality care possible. The VA, working alongside my aunt, made that happen. So, Christy, thank you for what you're doing, because I have seen firsthand how it can work, but you do not know if you do not reach out. So we will continue to emphasize that. Whether or not it's possible, you won't know if you don't ask the question. I also want to emphasize that my grandfather was a Korean War veteran who received hospice care in his own home by our very own AuthoriCare, which at the time was Hospice Alamance Caswell. They came out, they had a whole team coming to the home, and then my grandfather was transferred to inpatient hospice home, where he was cared for until he died. And my grandmother will tell you to this day what a wonderful, wonderful benefit that was to her to have that care for my grandfather. But again, I was not a part of this program back when my grandfather was receiving hospice care. And I wish I had asked more questions. I wish I had him back with me today to ask him more about his service in the Korean War, to have learned more from him about those experiences. So what I have learned since being a part of hospice and being a part of the We Honor Veterans program is asking those questions, learning more about the unique experiences of veterans. And I want to tell you, do not hesitate to reach out to the veteran service offices. My husband is a veteran. He does not need me to care for him yet, but what he does need me to do is to be an advocate for him. So he was in the Marines, and one of the first places we went after I learned about We Honor Veterans and these programs was to a veteran service office to talk with a representative about, we don't know what he's eligible for, but we'd like to know more. They sat down with us. They talked about how the process has worked to become enrolled in the VA, and they stay with you through that journey. So they help you. You don't have to figure it all out on your own. All you have to do is reach out. And as Risa said and Christy said, they're in every county, and we'll make sure that we include a link. So if you're not sure where to go, that you can access that and be able to find veteran service offices all across the state. If you're in another state, there may be a different setup. I work in South Carolina as well, and they have veteran affairs offices. So we can definitely provide some links to help you. But when you're trying to figure out, okay, maybe the veteran isn't enrolled, how do I even get started? The Veteran Service Office, you can't go wrong. And there's no wrong question. That things change within the VA a lot, and there's no way I can go to classes and every time I go to a class, I learn something new. So I think it's best to go to the folks who do that work every day, because they know they are most up to date on what's happening and changes, especially when it comes to things like service-connected conditions. They really have the most up-to-date information. So I hope that's helpful, Risa.
Yeah, definitely. And Christy, somebody is asking, you had mentioned that in certain circumstances, there is a monthly stipend for the caregiver to receive. Can you tell us more about that program, some more details, and how people would move ahead with finding out if they might be able to benefit from that?
So yes, they're the best place to learn more about the program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers is the website. And the website is www.caregiver.va.gov. And you can actually go to that website and look at the program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers and learn more about the program. There's an FAQ or frequently asked questions sheet, and you can learn more about the criteria for the program, and you can learn more about the need for activities of daily living. Thank you, Paul. He put the website in the chat. You can learn more about everything any questions you could possibly have about the program is in that website. So please feel free to go to that website and learn more about the stipend portion of the program.
And in addition to that, just for my understanding, it literally is, I may be the caregiver for a veteran, and while I'm already serving as a caregiver, I may qualify to receive monthly payment to aid me in that role as a caregiver.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. There's another question. Does a widow whose deceased husband served in the Korean War qualify for any services? And that is interesting in terms of, I know we are thinking about benefits, but are there other services that a widow or widower may qualify for beyond perhaps monetary benefits? Are there programmatic or care services that somebody might qualify for?
Well, and again, that would not come through the Veterans Health Administration, which is who I work for.
Mm-hmm.
So we wouldn't provide any services for a widower or a widow. Again, that would have to come through the Veterans Benefits Administration, or she would have to check with the Veteran Service Officer to see what type of benefits she would qualify for.
One thing, Shannon, I think about, because I think of hospice and I think about the illness and being a caregiver, and then the loss of a loved one. And I'm thinking particularly about bereavement services that are available through hospice services. And when we know that a veteran has died, and I think that bereavement services incorporate that information into the counseling, into the interactions. And maybe you could speak a little bit about that part of of hospice, which is available to those who have lost someone that they have provided care for and that they love, even if they weren't served by hospice.
Exactly. I was kind of thinking about two components with that. I was thinking about when a veteran is on service with hospice, the role of the social worker. I think it's very important that, some may think, maybe that time is limited on hospice. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't, right? It's based on eligibility for the service. So you can have someone on hospice services for a short period of time, sometimes for a longer period of time. And a veteran may have may be eligible for things and not even know it, even when they become a hospice patient. So social work, a lot of times as a component of hospice services, will work with a caregiver, the patient and their loved ones, in determining if there are things that they are still eligible for, and working through that process with them, sometimes in an expedited way, in order to make sure that they are receiving something that they're entitled to. So that's just a small example of, even while on service, there may be resource connection, or there may be opportunities where the team connects to Christy and your team. It can really vary, but that's a huge part of the work that happens in hospice, is connecting to any potential resource that can help, because our patients and families, they do not come on to hospice services knowing anything and everything about all the resources that are potentially available. That is a way that the hospice team helps in helping to connect to things to help improve quality, right? So that they are having the best experience possible during that time. And to the bereavement support, so for hospice patients, 13 months after the patient's death, they receive bereavement services as part of the hospice benefit. And we can definitely say this about AuthoriCare. Check within your communities if you're not local to AuthoriCare. But some hospice organizations extend those bereavement services out even if you're not a patient. So even if you haven't had care with the hospice organization, but you're grieving and you'd like to talk with someone and have that bereavement support, they're there for you. So again, there's no wrong question. And Risa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you called AuthoriCare today and you said, I just don't know where to start, I don't even know if I'm eligible, I'm a caregiver, I need help.
Absolutely.
There is a team there that is going to talk to you. And it may not be the right time for hospice. That's very important. It may not be the right time, but there's never a wrong time to ask. And if it's not hospice, community hospice organizations, they know a lot about their communities. They know a lot about the resources around them. So if it's not time for hospice, maybe it's time for another program or service that could be of help. And I can tell you, I know that there is a team there with a lot of expertise and knowledge that know a lot about resources. I can give you another example. Maybe you're thinking about volunteering. Maybe you're saying, I'm just wondering, how could I get involved? How can I get involved as potentially a veteran volunteer or working with veterans on hospice? That's something that hospice organizations are doing all across the state. You can just reach out and say, I'd like to know more about what that looks like and how could I be a part of that? Even myself as an association staff member, just this week had someone want to connect with a hospice in our state as a veteran to volunteer with other veterans. And I was able to make that connection and get them connected to somebody in their area. So lots of opportunities to learn more. I just think the biggest mistake that could be made is not taking the chance to reach out and ask those questions. I know benefits can be hard. It can be hard to really understand, and it's hard even for me in the work that I do. That's why I trust the resources that I have, like those veteran service officers, to set up a phone call and say, I have no idea if anything is available for me, but I want you to talk with me about my own individual situation. Because a lot of times it is very individualized based on service-connected conditions, disability ratings, these kind of things. So it's hard to really give just a one answer that applies to all. It's individualized, but don't hesitate to reach out and ask.
Right. And Christy, there's a question about when a veteran is enrolled in hospice, is there any service or person that can advocate for the veteran with the social worker for increased home health aid hours or respite in the home? And I would imagine your caregiver program might be at least a resource someplace where either the hospice social worker might help make a connection or being directly in touch with you to learn about services, because you can utilize your services and hospice services at the same time, correct?
Absolutely. And one thing to keep in mind is if your veteran is in hospice and you want to apply for the program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers, which is the stipend program, we do everything humanly possible to expedite that application because of the hospice status. And so we get that done as quickly as possible. And we usually have 90 days to complete the application. Because of the hospice status, we try to get it done much more quickly. And as far as if a veteran is on hospice status, the best person to work with for respite and homemaker home health aid is the primary care social worker. They are your fast line into getting more hours through the home and community based care program.
Okay, so the primary care social worker, so at our VA where we're receiving our medical care, even if we're not physically able to go there any longer because of our health condition, that's who we would still be able to reach out to.
Yes.
And certainly the hospice social worker and staff could
Absolutely.
be assistant.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Somebody has asked, I'm not familiar with this organization, Shannon, maybe you are. North Carolina Serves as a resource for family members or widows. It's a veteran service organization. I didn't know whether you had any familiarity or history in working with them, or maybe add it to your list.
I was going to say, I'm going to take a moment just to refresh. It is an agency that I have interacted with. I was just going to quickly look up their website. We can definitely share it. And I see they're also on NC Care 360, which is a website with a lot of different types of resources. Another great place in North Carolina that you can go. I was going to quickly look at that, and
Paul has shared the NC Care 360, so that's wonderful. And you know, as we're having this conversation, we're getting feedback, which is so heartening. Not a question, just praise. My husband, a World War II Marine veteran, was confined to bed for 12 months with both hospice care and VA care. The VA's home-based primary care team was VA at its best, very comprehensive, dedicated, and available. I want to add that I was able to use the VA benefit for home modification towards having a generator installed due to my concerns about power for bed, mattress, oxygen. This was 8 years ago, but thank you so much for that comment. It really helps us see the work that is being done in action and people's lives being positively impacted. And it's making those connections. And I think, Christy, about being a caregiver and sometimes being isolated. We know that that can be one of the primary realities for a caregiver. And I'm gathering that your programs, are they in person? They're virtual. You are able to connect people in a way that is addressing that social isolation.
So what we're doing right now is we've started doing both. Caregivers really seem to like that we went virtual after COVID because, especially for the ones who are tech savvy, they like the virtual because they don't have to leave their veteran at home alone, or they don't have to make arrangements for their veteran to have a sitter with them or respite, while they have, make time for travel, get to where they're going to do the support group, and then have travel time back to home. So in other words, they just log on like they did today and then log off and go back to caregiving. They love that. It's very convenient. And but we have started doing some in-person things. It's very infrequent when we do the in-person things. And the very first in-person class I did was back in August, and we had 8 caregivers show up, and it was awesome, and they loved it. But there's not a huge push for that right now. People aren't requesting it. I have one scheduled for Carnersville this month, and I have 7 people signed up for it. The rule of thumb is usually you have 7 people signed up for something and half will show up. So we'll see. I don't know how many will show up, but we've had really great response to our virtuals. And so, it just depends. We're trying to offer a mix of both, Risa.
Yeah. And I would imagine that connections are made. Once I meet another caregiver, I may be connected, and then that's another resource, and it expands my pool and helps me from an emotional standpoint, and also probably learning about resources that are shared back and forth.
It's amazing to see the connections that they make. Once they make that connection in the support group or the educational classes that we offer, they start exchanging numbers at the end of class or at the end of support group. And then they're texting and talking outside of support group and classes. And they formed their own network, their own informal network, which are the best kind of networks in the world.
Right. And Shannon, it makes me think about some of the activities that are available for veterans. I'm thinking about the different coffees and different ways that there are opportunities provided for veterans to gather. And there's a benefit for the veteran and clearly also then for a caregiver in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yes. That is so true. And I have attended veteran coffee hours. Those are hosted, AuthorCare hosts veteran coffee hours. There may be one in another area if you are not local to AuthorCare's service area. But they have been some of the most valuable and meaningful experiences of my life, because I watched veterans get together and have that camaraderie with each other and just enjoy sharing stories, learning. I learned about a lot of resources at the coffees, even for myself and for my husband, who's a veteran. So every business card, I don't think I've ever gotten rid of any business card, because you never know. You may not need that service now, but you may need it later. And having the ability to connect to someone quickly and efficiently it really is invaluable. And if you're out there today and you're saying, I have no idea where to start, there is nothing wrong with starting with that veteran service officer, like we discussed, to talk about eligibility, what services are available, reaching out to your local hospice organization, because there are a lot of folks there that know about resources, both about hospice, but also if it's not time for hospice, about other community resources that may be of benefit and help you all along whatever journey that you are walking.
Right. And somebody just did put something in the chat. And I think this is a theme I know as a social worker personally, I hear so often about just that sense of where do I even start? And I think that, certainly we're going to send out in an email tomorrow access to this recording, but links to the different services that we have mentioned. But our starting point, it seems like we want to make sure we're connected to the VA for our medical care, making use of our primary provider, the social worker with our primary provider. If hospice or palliative care is involved, making use of the social worker within the organization. And then Christy, I'm sure you get phone calls and you redirect people as appropriate and as needed. Because it sounds like you are really very much I think of a safe harbor, people that can feel comfortable and safe sharing their experience, which can be a very challenging one as a caregiver.
Absolutely. And, I have caregivers who come to me for all kinds of reasons, and reasons that have nothing to do with what I do at all. And, it could be because of benefits, and they know that I have nothing to do with that at all, but they trust me, and they know that I'm going to give them the answer that they need, or to lead them in the right direction. And so they just call me, or they send me a text and say, Christy, what about this? And so I say, you know what, I'm not really sure, but let me find out for you. And we just go in whatever direction we need to go in, and we get there.
Right. And I think that is, even when I think about hospice, and Shannon, you have mentioned it graciously many times, and it is worth mentioning that sometimes people think only a provider, a physician can make a referral to hospice. And the truth is anybody can pick up the phone and call the office, can send an email through our website. We want to have these conversations. We know that when we're in the middle of a crisis, or we're so many years into being a caregiver and feeling overwhelmed, that can be a hard time to begin to look for services. I wonder, Christy, in terms of length of time that you're often interacting, I know it probably varies, but do people tend to remain in the groups for quite a while? Or some are time limited, some are open-ended?
We have people who have been in the groups for, probably 4 years. And, as long as their veteran is, alive and well, they can stay in the group for as long as they need the support.
Right. And you do individual counseling as well, is that correct?
I do.
If my situation is one where individual counseling around caregiver issues, can you tell us a little bit about that? Is that also virtual? And
it is virtual or by phone.
Okay.
If the caregiver is not tech savvy, we can do the counseling, the sessions by phone. We prefer to do them virtually because we have the connection. We can make the eye contact and have the nonverbal cues going on, but we can do them by phone if needed. But again, the virtual is just preferred. But those are usually, with the REACH intervention and the caregiver health and well-being coaching, those are usually anywhere from 4 to 6 sessions.
And can you tell us, I know it's varied, but what are some common themes when you hear the struggles and the challenges? And I'm sure there are many wonderful things that you hear from the caregivers, but some themes that you're hearing just to help our participants, open their mind to the possibility that your services might be beneficial to them.
Okay, so some of the caregiver challenges that I hear very often are things like with PTSD, there are challenges in anger, of course. Veterans controlling their anger. And then with dementia, there are challenges with bathing, for instance. And with Parkinson's disease, there's challenges with strength, keeping the exercise going for as long as they can with the veterans. So those are some of the things that are going on with the caregivers. With the caregiver health and well-being coaching, some of the caregivers struggle with organization, whether it be their surroundings and just decluttering, just organizing their lives and keeping things together on a day-to-day basis. That's probably one of the main goals most of them have, is just staying organized. And, for example, one of the most fun things that I did with one of my caregivers, she said, my garage is just a mess. It's where I've put all of my clutter from the last 25 years of my marriage. She said, can you help me get it organized? I said, well, I can coach you. And so we came up with SMART goals. And her SMART goals were to, clean up one box a day for the next 30 days out of her garage. And she did that. And she had a pile, 3 piles. One was a donate pile, one was a yard sale pile, and one was a discard pile. And out of those 3 piles, one box a day, she cleaned out her garage in 30 days. And actually, it was more like 60 days, but she cleaned out her garage. And she took pictures and sent them to me by text. She was so proud. And it was so much fun to see her make this huge accomplishment. And she really felt this huge sense of accomplishment. She said, Christy, I never thought I could do it. And she did it. And, that's what health and well-being coaching is all about. And seeing someone accomplish something and feeling good about it, right? It's not about what's the matter with you. It's about what matters to you. And that mattered to her.
Right. And there's a comment about, taking time or finding time as a caregiver. And it sounds like you help create the space for people, as you said, to identify what's important to them. And caregivers don't often make space for that. And we know that to be an effective caregiver, we need to take care of ourselves. And we also know that we deserve that. And it can be important to have you helping to reinforce that notion that I am deserving that support.
Right. And we had to define what mattered to her in those sessions.
Right.
And it mattered to her to get that, what her values were around that garage and how it weighed heavily on her to get that garage cleaned up. And so redefining her time and finding time out of her schedule did matter to her.
Right. Well, thank you. this conversation has been really just amazing. And as we're coming to the end of the hour, I want to remind everyone that we are going to be, everyone registered for Zoom will be getting an email tomorrow with access to the recording. You can go back, watch it, share it with others. Also links to the different resources that we've discussed. You also, if you're on Facebook with us, can always go to the AuthoriCare Collective website, and we have a veterans page. And so a lot of information is available there. And Shannon, I wonder if you were going to say as a takeaway, what is it that you want us all to leave this space with in our minds?
Thank you, Risa, and thanks again, Christy, for the wonderful information you shared. I want to leave everyone, if you are on or watching this and you are a veteran, I want to say thank you for your service. Thank you so much for your service. If you are on and you are a caregiver of a veteran, I want to tell you thank you for what you're doing. And there is never a wrong question. Your journey changes every day, and you can always reach out and ask that question. It's never too soon. It's never too late. You can always reach out. So we're going to provide you some resources. I'm a resource. I don't know it all, but I know a lot of people, and that's important. So if you have anything that I can ever help with, I am more than happy to do that. Thank you for attending today. Thank you, Risa, for organizing this, and Paul.
Yeah. Christy, any takeaways that you want to leave us with?
Well, I just want to thank you, Shannon and Paul, for having me today and collaborating to make this happen. Want to thank the veterans and the caregivers and the healthcare professionals who are on the call. This is National Family Caregiver Month, so want to wish all the caregivers happy month, and thank you all for what you do. And the takeaway is that this is important stuff we're doing, and just keep going, keep pushing through, and thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you both for this wonderful conversation that we have had, the resources that have been shared. And I think really the affirmation that caregivers deserve very much to be attended to and receive services. And I want to encourage everyone on the webinar today to keep an eye out for future webinars that we will be hosting through our Power of Knowing series. We try to pick topics that are meaningful, and certainly the intersection of Veterans Day and Caregiver Month made this our perfect topic for the day. And I want to leave us with a quote from Dennis McDonough, who is the U.S. Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And he said, "One of the most important things we can do for caregivers is to help them take care of themselves as they selflessly take care of others." And that is certainly so true. So thank you for participating. Look for that email with information and links, and join us for a future webinar. And again, thank you, Shannon and Christy, and may we all have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.